Right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee on the 4th of June 2025. Would committee members please note that where a decision is made on an agenda item, to be able to participate in the debate and the vote, members must be present throughout the entirety of the committee's consideration of that item, including the presentation, all public speakers, and the question and debate sessions. In the event that a member needs to leave the chamber briefly during consideration of an item, but still wishes to participate, the member should indicate to the chair that they need to be excused. If this is the case, the chair will briefly suspend the meeting for the duration of their absence. Can I remind members that mobile phones should not be used as a means of communications during the meeting, and if members need to make or receive a message via their phone, please alert me as chair. Where members are using tablets to access the agenda papers electronically, please ensure that these are switched to aeroplane mode. With that, on to procedural business. So, can I ask, are any members in attendance as substitutes today? No, good. I would also like to know that I am not the regular chair, but I am the deputy chair stepping in for Councillor Thompson today. Do any members wish to declare an interest in relation to any matters included on the agenda today? Councillor Winder.
Just to be open about everything, this is an application that's one of the applications is in my ward, which is the Hanover Crescent one.
Brilliant. Thank you for letting us know. Any other declarations of interest? Well, thank you. In that case, I will move on to minutes of the previous meeting. Does the committee approve the minutes for the 7th of May 2025 as they are attached on the agenda? Councillor Theobald.
Sorry, it was just a sort of an extra thing. On 16, I didn't just consider the parking as an issue on that. I did actually make a remark about the height and also the previous design being better than this one. So I don't want people to think it was just to do with car parking. Okay, thank you.
Which item?
That's 16 to do with the hospital. 16. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I'll make those amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other amendments to the minutes? In that case, do the committee approve the minutes as amended? Agreed. Brilliant. In that case, I'll move on to Chair's communications. I'd like to note that these communications were prepared by Councillor Thompson and I've been asked to read them out on her behalf. I am sure you will be happy to join me in saying a huge thank you to Councillor Liz Lockram for all her sterling work as Chair of Planning for the past 2 years. Her knowledge and insight has been most welcoming, big shoes to fill. She will continue to participate in this committee, however, going forward. Please also join me in congratulating Maria Searle and Matthew Guest, who will be sharing the role as our much missed Jane Mosley undertook so diligently. They will now work as joint interim planning managers, so please do welcome them to their new positions. Moving on to public involvement, there are no public involvement items for this meeting. And also to agree applications for the subject of site visits. Do the committee members have any requests for accompanied site visits in relation to any applications that we are considering today? No, absolutely amazing. I would also like to note quickly, as I do realise I've missed one part, that we do not have any part 2 items today, so therefore the press and public will not need to be excluded from today's meeting. With that, before I go to the call over, I'd like to turn to Maria, who would like to alert us to some extra information regarding one of the items on today's agenda.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It was just to let you know that since the late list was circulated, we've received a couple of more representations on 2 of the applications. One on the Old Shoreham Road application, raising highways and traffic impacts, that those issues are already covered in your report. But we've also had an additional representation objecting to item B, that's for Church Place, on grounds of noise during the construction period. And again, as officers, given the sort of small scale of the proposal, we don't consider that a construction environmental management plan would be warranted. So I just thought I'd update you before you make your decision about call over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now turn to the Democratic Services Officer, who will now read out the applications on the agenda and ask committee members if they want to discuss any items, and they will be called.
Thank you, Chair. So we do have speakers today on item C, which is BH 2025/00363, Hanover Crescent Enclosure, Brighton. And so that is automatically called. So item A, BH 2025/00387, 182 Old Shoreham Road, Hove. Do members wish to discuss this application? Thank you. Item B, BH 2024/02796, 44A, Church Place, Brighton. Do members wish to discuss this application? Thank you. And then finally, item D, BH 2025/00150, 31 Wanderdown Road, Brighton. Do members wish to discuss this application? Thank you. So, Chair, to confirm, the applications called are A and C. C has speakers. So items B and D have not been called, so the running order will be C and followed by A. And also, just for those not called for discussion, the items are agreed as per the officer recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As mentioned by the Democratic Services Officer, we will be starting with item C, as this has public speakers on it. So I will now turn to Charlie, who will be doing a presentation for item C, Hanover Crescent Enclosure.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. So this application is at Hanover Crescent Enclosure. The application number is BH 2025/00363. So the application is for the installation of electric vehicle chargers for use by residents, including a new power hookup and kiosk. And so here's the application site. It's Hanover Crescent. You can see there, that's the road for Hanover Crescent, private road. So here's the aerial photo of the site. And here's indicated the two entrances to the site, the north and the south. So here's the north entrance from Lewis Road. And here's the south entrance from Lewis Road. And here's the location of the EV charger stand from the terrace towards the parking bays and the gardens. And here's the opposite view showing towards the parking bays and the terrace. Here's a location plan indicating where the proposed works will take place. And here's a block plan showing the location of the EV pillar and the kiosk. Here's a block plan with the nearby TPO trees indicated on it in relation to the kiosk and the pillar. Here's a tree location plan showing all of the TPO trees on site. Here's an example of a dual charging stand, which is similar to the one that's proposed. Here's some more details on the EV charger itself. And here's a diagram of the typical kiosk that will be used to house the electrical equipment. And some further images there. And here's a site plan showing where the cable would be installed. It would be underneath the road. So we received 8 letters in support in terms of the reasons they were for the sustainability and environmental benefits, it providing a better alternative to in-house charging cables. It encourages the use of electric vehicles. In keeping with the listed building, an improvement in air quality by reduction in traffic pollution, a lack of available chargers within the area, a limited visual impact on both the gardens and the listed buildings. The cost effectiveness was also listed, and also that it's in line with national and local government policy. In terms of the objections, we've got 6 objections, objecting on the basis of harm to the listed building and the conservation area, additional traffic/parking issues. Another thing was stated that the EV parking bays would no longer be accessible to residents with non-electric vehicles, poor design and overdevelopment, residential amenity, some safety concerns, and also some legal issues and unfair spending of communal funds as well. So key considerations were the impact on the heritage assets, the sustainability of the development, the impact on the highway, residential amenity, and the impact on TPO trees and landscaping. So yes, the proposed electric vehicle charging facilities considered to improve the sustainability of the site and would accord with policy CP8 of City Plan Part 1. We didn't identify any harm to neighbouring amenity, and it was set quite far away from the buildings. And the modest scale of proposal would cause less than substantial harm to the setting of the conservation area and listed buildings, and is outweighed by the benefits of the scheme. We didn't get any objections from the heritage team. There'd be no loss of parking spaces. The trees would be protected during construction, and some new landscaping is proposed. And we consider the legal issues raised by objectors not to be material planning considerations. So subject to some conditions, we recommend approval. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We have two speakers here today for this item. First, I'd like to call Paul Papadopoulos. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. If you'd like to come and take a seat just in front of me here. So, Paul, well, first of all, apologies if I've got your last name incorrect. And welcome to the Planning Committee. When you're ready to speak, if you hit the button on the right-hand side of the microphone in front of you, and when you start speaking, you will have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. The presentation states that legal objections raised are not planning considerations, and that the East Sussex Act 1981 and the Brighton and Hove Hanover Crescent Act 1985 are separate to the planning process. With respect, that appears to be incorrect. Courts have held that the planning authority must refuse permission if the very development proposed would be unlawful. I believe that this point is settled in case law. Also, the Planning Act 2004 requires you to decide applications in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. A statutory ban is the strongest possible material consideration that exists. What does the 1981 Act say? It says, the road and garden shall be kept and maintained by the committee as a pleasure ground, and no buildings or structures shall be erected thereon except a garden shed required for the maintenance of the garden. In plain language, the garden must remain recreational. No structures of any kind may be added apart from a garden shed. The purpose of the only exception allowed is, of course, for gardening. The wording could not be clearer. EV chargers, concrete bases, underground cabling, and a power kiosk are all structures, so the works would be in breach of the Act the moment they began. They are also, of course, unrelated to gardening. The section contains no get-out clauses, no unless the council consents or unless planning permission is granted. Parliament has set an absolute bar. The 1985 Act makes the funding unlawful too. The Brighton and Hove Act limits the committee's levy to routine garden maintenance approved at an AGM chaired by the Mayor. There has been no AGM approval. The money earmarked for this project is to come from a contingency fund raised specifically for the purpose of garden maintenance. Spending the levy on anything that is not maintenance is squarely outside of this Act. This matters because the funding decision is not a private dispute, but a misuse of private funds obtained from residents using the council's own statute. Why does this matter to you as planners and owners of the land? The council is not just the planning authority, it owns the freehold of the garden and the road. If you vote approve, you hand the applicants permission to commit an offence on council land, paid for with funds collected in breach of the council's own legislation. Because the council is freeholder, Because the council is freeholder, it will be a party to that breach. Residents of this crescent have a right to these protections. The 1981 Act itself was enshrined because the enclosure was given to the council by a previous resident. Approving this project would be a breach of that trust, ending some 200 years of protection.
Thank you very much. If you'd like, just go take a seat just behind you, and we'll be able to call you back if councillors have any questions for you in a minute. We also have Martha Turland here, who is the I believe the applicant. If you'd like to come and take a seat. Thank you very much. Once again, if you hit the right hand button on your microphone when you're ready, and when you start speaking, you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Hanover Crescent Enclosure Committee. We number 8 and were re-elected at our AGM last month. I speak in support of this proposal to bring EV charging facility to our road. In a ballot of 110 eligible votes and a turnout of 75%, this scheme was approved by 72% last December. In addition to the proposal, the ballot sought approval for a loan of £10,000 from present funds to pay for installation, which will be repaid within 10 years by EV users via access fees and an uplift on the electricity tariff used to charge their vehicles. The remainder of the installation costs will be met by 6 households who have an interest in the project going ahead. This funding mechanism was approved in the ballot, so a resident will only contribute to the costs if they run an EV. With this mandate, the committee submitted the planning application being considered today. We're keen to see improvements to air quality on Lewis Road, and as an asthma sufferer myself, I can attest to that aim. Swapping our fossil fuel vehicles for cleaner EVs is only possible if we have access to home charging facilities. We welcome the Brighton and Hove initiative to roll out EV chargers, but councillors will recognise that residents of Hanover Crescent do not have access to zoned parking provision, and so we need to provide that facility ourselves. We manage our own parking, and there will be no reduction in parking provision. The common land in Hanover Crescent enclosure is owned by the council but managed on an exclusive basis on behalf of all residents and owners by the Enclosure Committee, as set out in the East Sussex Act 1981. The enclosure consists of the garden, the boundary wall, the gates, the road, and the pavement. The objector maintains that the reading should be limited to the garden only, but in recent years we have surfaced the road, created the pavement, repaired the boundary wall, painted white parking bay lines, created secure bicycle parking, and installed railings. Some of these projects can be seen in item 3, History of Relevant Planning Permission. Needless to say, historically, the Crescent enclosure has absorbed new infrastructure such as electricity, gas, water, street lighting, and telephone, whilst maintaining its charm and historical relevance. The recommendation of the planning report on this application in 9.12 clearly states that issues regarding the East Sussex Act and the 1985 Act that the objector refers to do not form part of the consideration of this application. Neither planning nor heritage identify concern with our proposal and have granted permission subject to items that we are currently undertaking.
I'm afraid that's time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll just put time to the lawyer for a point of clarification.
Thank you, Chair. So reference is made to the East Sussex Act of 1981 and the prohibition, as it were, as stated by the objector, for buildings on this site. We've had a look at it and very fact specific. We think in this case it's outside the remit of planning considerations. It's governed by other legislation, that being the 1981 Act. And the general rule is that if that's the case, that other legislation will deal with the issues raised. So the conclusion is that you are able to determine the application as stands before you today.
Thank you. I will now take member questions. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Shanks.
I'm not sure if it's to officers or so. Are those electric? Would they be available for members of the public to drive along and charge? Me, I've got electric car. But and I didn't really understand that about other people using the spaces, like that those spaces are then blocked for other residents. Because I don't know how it works there, whether residents can park where they like or they have a designated space. But I think the resident said that doesn't apply, isn't the case, but maybe they know.
I'll just ask if the resident would like, the applicant would like to come back and answer that question then.
Oh, sorry.
Because it's a private road, residents on Hanover Crescent don't have access to the zoned parking provision that's available in Brighton and Hove. So we have parking on our road, and we have a mechanism for issuing residents permits. So at the moment we have 48 bays and 42 vehicles that are permitted to park on Hanover Crescent. So there'll be 2 bays that will be next to the charging post, but any vehicle that is permitted to park on Hanover Crescent will be able to use those bays. So essentially it's kind of based on good neighbourliness, really, that will communicate amongst each other and, move a car or wait until the bay becomes available. There's no public parking on Hanover Crescent at the moment, or ever.
Thank you. Can you just, there we go then. Right, Councillor Robinson.
It's more a question for a legal advisor. So back to the comment that you just made about the 1981 Act. So does that mean then, if we grant permission for this and the objector continues to have objections, he'll have to seek some kind of, not recompense, but would have to apply to a different authority to challenge the installation?
Yes, that's correct. The actual, you need to challenge it under the 1981 Act if you wish to do so. Obviously seek his own advice on that regard. Not by the planning considerations, no.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Theobald.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered about how much room it takes of the garden, because it says it's actually mounted at the garden area, and just wonder how much of that garden it actually takes. Perhaps somebody can answer that.
Thank you. Yeah, so I can show you. Just go back to the drawing. So this is how much of the garden space would be taken up by the kiosk itself. So it would be about 1 metre and 6 centimetres by 32 centimetres deep. So that's the area of the kiosk. And while I don't have a exact diagram, this is the sort of area that would be taken up by the stand. So hopefully that provides some information.
Is the garden quite big? So that's just only one small part of it. Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yes, so shown here on the block plan, you can see that it would take up a very small proportion of the total garden area. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cattell.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the photographs in the presentation, I can see that there's this kind of row of posts at the back of the parking spaces, and I'm presuming that some of them have got words on them, so they're like little, they could look about this high. So I'm thinking that do they breach the acts that have been put before us today? Because it seems to me a little bit unreasonable to say that the charger, which is probably no bigger than any of these little parking bay posts, would actually have much more effect than any of them. So I'm just thinking, what sort of, who am I asking for this? I mean, I'm just, obviously from the legal point of view, it's, do they, is it potentially, do they actually breach the acts? I'm guessing not, but I'm letting you.
Thank you. But it's a building in the actual local act, so and a definition of a building, would those posts be defined as a building? I think I have to defer to the planners for that, to be honest. So probably not, no.
Wanted to point out more in the argument on that, because there's no difference to me on that. And thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Anyone else want to ask any questions? Councillor Parrott.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to check the kiosk. Will it support more than one EV charger? Because obviously there's the potential for increased EV charging as we get more electric cars further down the line. Is this a kind of substantial project that will then allow for more electrical vehicles to be used and charged?
I can see that the applicant has put her hand up there, so I'll let you answer.
So, excuse me, I was just very familiar with the project. So no, once the infrastructure goes in, so that's the cabling that goes in under the road and then runs to the kiosk. If at any point in the future additional charging posts were desired, then it would just run from the kiosk. So yes, so that infrastructure would maintain multiple other charging posts if necessary, although we have calculated that we probably won't need to do that according to the number of vehicles that are allowed to park on the Crescent. We think that given the flow of cars charging, that probably one post would probably be sufficient for the foreseeable future.
Thank you. Any more questions? In that case, I will move us over to debate. Who would like to start us off? Councillor Theobald.
Yes, thank you. As there is a protection against the trees and it seems limited visual impact to the garden, it is actually good to have some electric charging points, especially for sustainability. And in the report it says that the lack of availability of these charging points in the area. So all in all, I think it's good to have them. And I think most of the residents seem to want them. So I can't see how to go against this, and I would grant it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I tend to agree with Councillor Theobald, and I think that the residents have obviously gone through quite a robust process within their own group. So what's not to like? And the fact that they can't charge their vehicles on the road because they don't have residents parking permits to allow them to do that, this of course is the only way that they can charge their vehicles, and we all want more electric vehicles across the city. So I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to participate in the debate? Councillor Shanks.
Yes, I think it's great. A great project. You can actually, obviously, go somewhere else and park because they're not all on residents parking EV chargers. But anyway,
If you can find them.
yes. But anyway, I think it's really good, and I mean, people want them next to their homes, so that makes sense.
Sorry, Chair, can I just say that, like, you can, if you've got a parking voucher, if you're paying for park, you've got a parking pass, you can only charge in your own zone. Well, at least that's, where I live it is. So, again, why would you want to park outside of the parking space that you pay for in where you live? So.
Okay, right. Would anyone else like to participate in debate? No? In that case, let us move to the vote. Could all members who support this application please raise their hand? Okay, that has been granted unanimously. So I'd like to thank all members who came from the public and thank you for your participation. And we will now be moving on to the application 182 Old Shoreham Road. I will now turn to Maria, who will be giving us the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. This application is at 182 Old Shoreham Road, reference BH 2025 00387. Just make sure it's his name. Plan permission is sought for shopfront alterations and alterations to doors, fascias and glazing, with alterations to the service area with a new loading bay arrangement and some associated works. Members should note that no change of use of the retail premises is proposed as part of this application, or indeed it isn't required. This is a map of the application site. It's the former home base that closed down early on this year. It's not far from the junction of the Old Shoreham Road and Sackville Road. This is the existing site location plan with the buildings outlined in red. And then the blue is the wider site that also incorporates Carpetright to the south here, also Howdens to the west here, and the car park itself. I've included this slide so members are aware that the southern part of the site is within a protected industrial and business zone in the city plan. This is an aerial photo of the site. And again, another aerial photo, and you'll see that it is this sort of wider site that wraps behind Carpetright itself with the car park. This is an east elevation looking at the main entrance. This is the view from the Old Shoreham Road. There are currently 2 existing pedestrian accesses across into the site. This is the north elevation, and it shows some of the greenery and landscaping, and I'll just point members' attention to that currently this wall, this elevation facing the Old Shoreham Road is currently quite a blank wall. And again, this is an older image from the Old Shoreham Road because Howdens are now in where the old ambulance use was previously. This is the east elevation and the car park looking north. And again, looking west. This is the loading bay, and some of the alterations involve removal of this canopy that you can just see here. These are the existing elevations, as I've shown also in the photographs. As you can see, quite a lot of sort of blank elevations. And some of the proposed elevations to introduce some additional glazing here where my cursor is. This is to the east, and also some painting of some of the existing features and some additional doors. And then this is probably the elevation that's got most change, and that's to the north, and that's to the Old Shoreham Road, where it's proposed to open this up a bit more and introduce significant glazing. And again, to the south, very minimal alterations, removal of the loading bay canopy and introduction of a new loading bay and a door. And again, to the west, just a very small alteration down here next to Howdens. The existing ground floor, as you'd expect, is a very large straw sort of floor plate with a very small mezzanine. The proposed demolition is quite minimal, sort of internal alterations here, including the mezzanine will go. And the proposed site plan, again, no additional floor space is proposed. It's all external alterations, so the loading bay here, and also the glazing in these areas here. We've received 5 representations objecting for the following reasons: highway safety impacts, loss of the DIY store, and over provision of food supermarkets, detrimental effect on property value, and amenity harm. And we've had 4 representations supporting for the following reasons: they welcome refurbishment of the site and the regeneration and the new jobs that will be created, and they feel it's good to have a pedestrian and accessible food store to walk to. We have received a comment from Brighton and Hove buses And they broadly support the proposal, but they do request a review of the nearby junctions by the local highway authority and a service management plan in terms of the loading, plus some enhancements to bus stops in the proximity. In terms of the considerations before you, bearing in mind that this is not a change of use, so the main considerations are the design of the external alterations that are proposed, any amenity impacts that might arise from those external alterations, and any highways impacts with regard to the new loading arrangements only. In terms of conclusion and planning balance, just to reiterate again that no change of use is proposed. So, for example, a supermarket could operate from there tomorrow without any planning consent required. So what's before you now is just an application for its external alterations and the alterations to that loading bay, which already exists, the loading bay, it's just an alteration. We consider that the design is overall sympathetic to the current property and to the wider sort of public realm. It would help bring obviously a vacant store into use that's been vacant since at least January. We do not consider that there's significant amenity harm. As I say, no change of use is occurring. There's no increase in floor space. The loading bay alterations are not near to residential properties. The hours of delivery and hours of opening will now be restricted, which actually currently, and when it was home-based, were not. The impacts of the proposed development are not considered to lead to significant or material change in the character of traffic generated from the site. Obviously, bear in mind it's the same use class, and there's no change of use. There's no increase in floor space. There's no changes to the car parking or the access points proposed. The Highway Authority confirmed that the alterations to the loading bays would be safe. And consideration will be given by the local highway authority to the issues raised by the bus company, but that is separate to planning as no change of use is proposed. Therefore, approval is recommended.
Thank you very much. I'd like to make members aware that Penny Moss, the agent for the applicant, is in the room with us, and will be able to answer questions if you have any that we feel is best answered by her. With that, do members have any questions? Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is the right time to ask this question, or perhaps I should speak to the agent. I've got some concerns about traffic, and I appreciate that the bus company have made comment, and my concern is around when the previous home base was there was a queue of traffic to come out and turn right onto Old Shoreham Road. I think once there's a supermarket there, the traffic will be heavier. So maybe there'll need to be some changes to the phasing of the traffic lights or something. Where does that get put in as? Sorry, how does that get enacted? I know it may not be a total planning consideration, but at this juncture, I'd like to raise that as a concern. Thank you.
We do have a member from Transport on the line, Alistair. Alistair, would you be able to answer that question for us?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the question. So it's when would we consider the phasing of the lights and turning right on exit onto Old Shoreham Road? Is that the question? Yeah, so you may have seen our second response where we have asked for transport assessment. That was rebuffed by the applicant. And so, well, we would just have to do that as part of our normal sort of signals reviews operations. So yeah, we've got a team in transport that looks at all the signals in the city, and it would be for them to do a review if any problems arise.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Theobald.
I just wondered how many cars were in the car park there, and does it include a whole of that area where the car pits up place is as well, as one whole thing? What's the other thing I was going to ask? A lot of these larger stores tend to have the public toilets in. Do you know if this has got that? And another question, which is probably a bit silly, but is there any sort of 106 or SIL in this application at all? Okay, thank you.
I can confirm that the whole car park is sort of unrestricted, whether you're going to carpet right or Aldi if this is approved. So yeah, there's not anything that's going to be sort of hived off just for one or the other. I might have to defer to the applicant in terms of the public toilet, but I can have a look on the plans in the meantime as well. In terms of section 106 and sill, because there's no actual new floor space being created and there's no change of use application to use this as a supermarket, then in planning terms, it's not necessary to make the development acceptable, because the development that you're asked to comment on and consider purely the external alterations. So we're very limited, and it would be outside of the planning remit in this case.
So the internal, it doesn't matter what they do internally. The mezzanine floor, I don't know why they want to get rid of that, don't they? I don't know why.
I'm just going to ask the applicant to answer that question for you.
Thank you. So we're looking to get rid of the mezzanine floor because it's not required. It was obviously there for home base, and they used it for, we think, ancillary staff facilities, but Aldi have got sufficient space on the ground floor, so we're taking that out as part of this application, and there will be a public toilet.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, I'm afraid I have to echo Councillor Robinson's concerns about the traffic. There is a well-known food supermarket in the Goldstone Retail Park a few yards further down. That junction does get rammed when that supermarket is open during busy times. And I suspect that the same is going to happen at this development we're being asked. I know it's not a change of use, but is there actually a change of opening hours? Because I would think that many more people are going to go to a food supermarket than they are to an old kind of home base. So I reckon it probably will be inevitable that there are going to be problems at that junction that are being asked to consider, and we probably will need to rephase the lights, and certainly we will need to look at the bus stop arrangements. So that's a real concern of mine.
I suppose just really to reiterate, I think it is acknowledged that there may be a change in the traffic patterns, obviously, that will serve a supermarket compared to a home base. However, in planning terms, it's all within the same use class. So therefore, you can't consider those changing traffic patterns. You can only consider whether the new loading arrangements, for example, might have an impact on those traffic patterns. And as it's already an existing loading bay, we are conditioning that the hours of the servicing are restricted, which currently there are no restrictions on any of the servicing. And also there is a condition to restrict the opening hours of the store. And again, they're in your report on page 23, condition 9. And again, this was to provide reassurance that this is not going to be a 24-hour supermarket, because currently there are absolutely no restrictions on opening hours for the previous home base. I can't comment how the proposed Aldi hours of opening will compare to the home base, but what I can say is that there will now be a control and restriction as set out in the report. In terms of obviously the phasing of the traffic lights, etc., the transport team have assured me that obviously that the bus company's representation, albeit it was made on a planning application, obviously that the bus company make representations all the time to the transport team, and as part of that overall process they will be looking at all of the things that the bus company has raised, and phasing of lights could be one of those things that they do look at.
Yeah, so I only raise it in response to that bottom paragraph in bold up on the slide where it says blah, 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 will not be so significant or lead to material change in the character of traffic generated. I'm just saying I think it will be. So I'm just challenging the assertion. So
I suppose what I'm saying is planning legislation deems that you can have different types of traffic generation all within a same use class. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. Councillor Shanks.
Mine was about opening hours as well. Yeah.
In that case, Councillor Nam.
I think my question was answered in response to Councillor Murphy's question, but I'll just check anyway. So in 6.3 it says, considering the comments of Brighton and Hove buses, there'd be a request for additional transport information. Does that mean that it'll open? If it does, and then an eye will be kept on the situation, it'll be monitored, and then if there's need for changes to the bus patterns, then that'll be what will happen.
I'm going to ask Alistair again to come back and answer that one.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I mean that is as you described it. That is how we would have to handle it. Once it's open, just monitor the impacts, and yeah, we work closely with Brighton and Hove buses. So yeah, that's what we would do. Just discuss any alterations to services that are required. Yeah, if it proves problematic.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. On the same subject, sorry. So you said that the applicant rebuffed the request for a traffic assessment. Had a traffic assessment taken place, would the phasing of the lights be, would some work have been done to ease the traffic congestion around the area prior to the opening of the store? And just to kind of continue from that, it's kind of surprising that if that was the case, it's surprising the application didn't want that, because it's their customers who are going to suffer queuing up to get out of that facility onto Old Shoreham Road. If that was me, I think, well, I wouldn't bother going there again because it's taken me too long to get in and out. So it's in their own interest. Or have I misunderstood what that really meant? Thank you.
If I could just go first, and then maybe Alistair can jump in. It wasn't necessarily a case that the applicant rebuffed the request for additional information. The transport team obviously did highlight that ideally they would have liked to have seen that information, but then following discussion with planning officers, it sort of pointed out that because there isn't a change of use, we can't insist on that information. We did ask for it. However, obviously, if it's not absolutely required to make the development or for us to assess the development, that's how that was left, essentially. I don't know if, Alistair, you want to add anything on to that?
No, I don't think so. I think we just concluded that the Highway Authority would have liked a transport assessment to have been undertaken. We can't preempt what that would have shown. From other applications, similar applications, we typically find that, or we have found maybe not such a high percentage of impact on local junctions comes from a new supermarket, not as high as you might expect. But yeah, it is hard to preempt what the transport assessment would have said and what that would have led to.
I suppose I just want to point out, obviously, retail use, Class E, is the same use whether it's a supermarket, home base, or any other type of retail use. So I think, as I stated, that yes, there might be a change in traffic pattern, or even possibly an intensification of traffic. However, it's still within the same use class. So the government has deemed that in legislation, yes, there might be some slightly different impacts or slightly greater impacts, but they don't require planning permission.
Thank you, that's clear.
Thank you. Councillor Shanks.
Is there anything in the city plan that says, I know, yes, it's retail, but that says how many supermarkets we'd expect to have in our city? Because we have also recently approved one from the same company somewhere else in the city. I mean, I presume that it's not a planning consideration here, but is there any sort of overarching thing that says how much retail we need generally?
Well, you're right, it's not a consideration for this, but I point you to the planning policy comments on page 26. But essentially, yes, in the city plan, there are policies to ensure that supermarkets should be looking at town centres first, and then sort of a sequential test, and then consider other sites if those aren't available. But it's not the role of the planning system to get involved in competition. So if the supermarkets believe that there's a market out there, there are no planning policies or indeed national legislation to say you can limit the number that come forward. Yeah. It's more about where they are.
Thank you. Do any more members have any questions? Right, in that case, I would like to move us over to debate. Councillor Cattell.
Thank you, Chair. So this is basically an application for shopfront, and this is what we have to look at. Nobody has mentioned the design. Nobody has said anything about the design or whether they're happy with it. And I think the conversations mainly it's been about traffic, which isn't an issue here because we're not looking at change of use. Now, from my point of view, there will come a time in the future when buildings like this will possibly be listed. I hope it's a long time in the future because they're fantastic examples of that kind of early 1980s, let's make all commercial buildings look like Victorian primary schools. So I think what's happening here is a huge improvement, but the bar's low. And I welcome the fact that it will have a much more attractive feel to it, and that there'll be more active frontage, which is something that we like to see in planning. So I'll be voting for it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
I just really want to agree with Julie. I think that's a particularly bleak building in what is a lovely area. And I think the conclusion that the proposed works are considered to improve the appearance of the unit are sort of objectively true. So for that reason, I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Theobald.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I welcome this refurbishment. It seems a very popular store. The one in Carlton Terrace, which I've visited a few times, has got a very small car park, and this will have a good lot of car parking. I like the design, and I think the glazing is good. There's a nice lot of glazing which will make it more attractive. And of course, it will create jobs, which is good also. So all in all, I welcome this store, and I think it will revitalise the area. So I'm very pleased about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, after all my groaning and questions about cars, I do actually think it'd be a massive improvement to the area. Yes, that building is quite ugly, and having some nice glazed frontage on a Old Shoreham Road, I'm sure it'd be much appreciated. Thank you. So I will be voting for it.
Thank you. Councillor Winder.
Thank you. I will also be supporting it because it is an improvement. The building was quite shabby before, and it's actually going to add to the area. So I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Earthy.
Yes, I've been a moaning mini as well, but I've never had an issue with the building itself either. I just was worried about the consequences of it. But yes, I will be approving it. It's a vast improvement.
Thank you. Anybody else? In that case, I would let us move over to the vote. Can all members in support of this application please raise their hand? And that has also passed unanimously. What an agreeable bunch we are today. With that, that is the last application we have for hearing today. So please note that there is a list of new appeals lodged attached to the agenda, as well as appeal decisions attached to the agenda at items 100 and 102 respectively. And with that, go home.